In July 1990, four Czech guys decided to go on an adventure to find the Mongolian Death Worm, a creature that might have inspired the monster you've seen in the movie Doom. They say it lives somewhere deep in the Gobi Desert, so they flew to Mongolia, hopped into an ATV, and hired some local guides to help them. All that to meet a creature that is up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything, and is capable of shooting electricity at those it doesn't like. Legend says that these friendly guys spend most of their days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but they'd like to come out during the wetter months of June and July. So the timing for a spotting was simply perfect. But the crew needed to figure out how to lure the creature. Sadly for them, no one knew what the giant worm liked to eat. So they built a thumper, which is a machine that made rhythmic pounding noises. They were hoping it would call the worm out of the ground. For 2 months, they searched the vast desert, crossing dunes and rocky plains, looking for any sign of the creature. But alas, it didn't really work out. Ivan McCurley, who was the leader of the 1990 expedition, came back to Gobi Desert again. He once tried to attract the megaworm with blasts, and the second time he used a small airplane to scout the dunes. Over the years, groups from America, Britain, and New Zealand organized big expeditions to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many others came from all around the world on their own and found nothing. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At a meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them described it as looking like a sausage, about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so venomous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. In May 2005, 4 friends from Great Britain who search for monsters professionally decided to try their luck. They made drawings of the worm and hired local people to hand out flyers all over the Gobi Desert. These flyers offered a reward to anyone who could give information about the worm or even bring them a specimen. They thought loud sounds that other explorers tried would scare the beast away. Some told them it likes damp conditions, so they came up with a plan to block streams of water to create wet areas that would lure the worm out. Their plan didn't work because it was too hard to build dams in the desert. They ended up using small traps, but didn't find any actual proof that the worm existed. But they did meet locals who shared interesting stories about strange creatures they had seen over 70 years. Over the years, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. It's white-gray or scaly and brown, or maybe fleshy and bright red. Someone said it resembled a snake, or maybe a caterpillar, or maybe it has wings and can fly. And some believe it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. Maybe the stories are so different, and the search operations are so fruitless, because the creature doesn't even exist. Or it could be one of many cryptids. Those creatures like Bigfoot, Yeti, the Loch Ness Monster, their existence has yet to be proven. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to catch the mysterious worm. He also learned there was a nest nearby. The scientist bravely approached the hole in the sand and put his hand inside. A giant creature dragged him in, and he was never seen again. Just kidding. He actually found a Tartar sand boa inside. It's a chunky, burrowing, non-venomous snake that has small eyes and gray-brown scales. He showed it to the locals to verify if it was the monster, and supposedly all of them said yes. Most Mongolians who know about the worm still believe it's real. Now, even though people call our supposed monster a worm, it's just what it sounds like in the English translation. Many Mongol cultures have used this word for centuries to refer to any animals they thought to be really dangerous, especially snakes, even non-venomous ones. So, it doesn't have to be a literal worm after all. Worms are soft and squishy, but a creature living in the harsh Gobi Desert would need to be tougher, more like a snake or a type of lizard without legs. Neither of these creatures can shoot electricity or spit acid like they say the death worm does. But some snakes, like cobras, can spit venom that's dangerous for people. If it were real, the creature would have a backbone, and explorers searching for it would likely find some bones or evidence left behind. And there are actually fossil remains all over the Gobi Desert. Scientists found representatives of over 80 dino groups here over the last almost 100 years. It all started with the world's first dinosaur egg nests. This discovery changed all the scientists knew about dinos. It was the first proof they laid eggs. In the following 2 years, the same expedition team unearthed over 100 dinosaurs and took them to the American Museum of Natural History, where you can still see them today. Some of them were swimming around in the Cretaceous Sea that used to be here about 71 million years ago. They resembled modern birds. The mystery of the megaworm is still unsolved, but there used to be another mystery scientists finally managed to explain. Back in the 13th century, a famous traveler, Marco Polo, not the guy from the swimming pool game, crossed the Gobi Desert. He thought he could hear mysterious noises, like the sounds of musical instruments such as drums. He wrote about it in his book and believed he might be hearing the voices of restless spirits. Scientists call these noises singing sands or booming sands. Unlike the squeaky sound you might hear when walking on a sandy beach, these desert sounds are much louder, like a musical instrument playing deep, haunting notes. Over the years, people came up with all kinds of ideas about what caused the sounds, like underground water or winds making the sand vibrate. Not all dunes can do this, and scientists wanted to figure out why. Sometimes the winds might cause a small avalanche on the side of a dune, and then you can hear the magical sound start. But this is rare. So, to study it, scientists had to help the dunes sing. They climbed to the top of a dune and slid down on their backs, using their hands and feet to push sand down. As the sand tumbled, the sound started softly and got louder. They could even feel the vibrations with their hands. So they found out that for a dune to sing, a few special things need to happen. The grains of sand must be the right shape. The dune has to be big, and the sand must be very dry, so no singing after it rains. Inside the dune, there's a hard layer of packed sand that acts like a giant speaker. This layer bounces the sound waves back and forth, makes the noise louder and louder, and creates a haunting melody that can fill the desert air. In other words, the dunes can play tunes. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't help myself with that one.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth, and one of the most recognizable ones. There are 2 species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Narracuta Caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the quincana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the quincana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the quincana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got outcompeted by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the quincana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the quincana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the quincana to chase its prey for long periods of time, exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth. Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But quincana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The Thylacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the Thylacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily, they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Meliolania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Meliolania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Meliolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Meliolania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Meliolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalonia's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalonia, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalonia was the only member of the genus Megalonia, but these days it belongs to the genus Varanus, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on our list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Genyornis lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Genyornis in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Genyornis was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds.
Life on a high-oxygen planet would be a wild and crazy ride. Imagine taking a deep breath and feeling like you just downed a shot of espresso. The sky is a deep shade of blue, and the trees around you are gigantic, lush and green, growing at a rapid pace. Daily exercise now becomes a breeze. With all that extra oxygen, you'd be able to run faster, jump higher, and lift heavier weights. Your morning run is basically effortless, and you notice that everything seems to move faster and with more energy. But you'd also have to watch out for the wildlife. The animals around you would be simply huge, and they'd move with a heightened speed and agility. Imagine getting chased by a cheetah that's hopped up on oxygen. It'd be like running from a Ferrari with legs. But how is this even possible? And how would high levels of oxygen affect the evolution of the planet and our life in general? To answer this question, you need to understand how oxygen works. Oxygen is like the fuel that powers the engines of life. It's a gas that's all around us, making up about 21% of the air we breathe. And don't let that small percentage fool you. Every time you take a breath, these little molecules get top priority access to your body's cells and help them produce energy. Without oxygen, your cells wouldn't have the energy they need to function properly, and your body would start to shut down. Oxygen is also incredibly versatile. It's used by a wide range of organisms, from tiny bacteria to massive elephants. It's even in the ocean. Marine organisms like plankton and algae produce a ton of oxygen, keeping the underwater world thriving. And not only is it a crucial component of life on Earth, it's also a fountain of youth. Oxygen keeps our skin glowing and our minds sharp. So don't forget to walk in the fresh air more often. But that's just the beginning. Oxygen is quite a multitasker, doing a bunch of different jobs at once. For starters, it's like the janitor of the atmosphere, cleaning up all the nasty pollutants and keeping the air fresh and clean. It's also the bodyguard of our atmosphere, protecting us from harmful UV rays and other dangerous cosmic stuff. Without it, we'd be like sitting ducks in the face of space radiation. And let's not forget about the impact of oxygen on the weather. It's like the puppet master, pulling the strings of the atmosphere and creating all sorts of wacky weather patterns. Tornadoes, hurricanes, thunderstorms, they're all just a product of oxygen doing its thing. And sure, these things are incredibly dangerous, but they also help redistribute nutrients and organic matter, by lifting and transporting soil, leaves, and other debris to new areas. So they low-key help fertilize soil and provide nutrients for plants and other organisms. As you can see, the little oxygen molecules are working hard to keep everything in check. So what would happen if we suddenly raise the levels up to 30, 40, even 50%? Actually, too much oxygen can become very dangerous for us. There's such a thing called oxygen toxicity. It can lead to a range of pretty bad symptoms and even the worst of outcomes. It's like eating too much candy. It might taste good at first, but you'll regret it later. It may sound surprising, but if you get too much oxygen, you'll be out of breath. You might feel great at first, but pretty soon you'll start feeling dizzy, like you've been dancing for hours without taking a break. Also, high oxygen levels can be downright toxic to your body. It can leave you feeling like you got hit by a truck. In fact, something similar happened on Earth many years ago. For example, this kind of environment existed during the Carboniferous period, when plants first began to take root on land. At that time, oxygen made up 20% of the atmosphere, about the same as today. It continued to rise over the next 50 million years, reaching levels as high as 35%. It had some pretty profound effects on the planet. Around 300 million years ago, massive forests sprang up on land and huge swamps dominated low-lying areas. But as these giant plants decayed, something strange happened. The level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere suddenly dropped. Normally, when something decays, microbes break it down and create carbon dioxide. This gas helps us to trap the sun's heat and makes the planet warmer. But when these giant plants were buried under the deep swamps, microbes couldn't do their magic. All this made our planet much cooler, in a temperature sense. Who knew that something as simple as a breath of fresh air could have such a big impact? But this period of life on Earth helped us understand what our planet would look like if the oxygen level on it was much higher. And here's what we learned. We've already talked about the initial boost of energy and the exhaustion that follows. So we might need to wear special masks or equipment to help us breathe comfortably. Such an environment could also help you heal faster. It's like having a team of tiny doctors inside your body. But the downside is that it could also make you more susceptible to certain diseases and illnesses. So we're maintaining a balance then, I guess. And with all that oxygen, we'd have some pretty spectacular sunsets and sunrises to enjoy. The extra oxygen in the atmosphere would scatter light in new and interesting ways, creating breathtaking displays of color in the sky. And it's not just humans that would be affected. Plants and animals can also experience some wacky effects. Plants might grow like they're on steroids, reaching towering heights, like the beanstalk from that fairy tale. Imagine how much food we'd be able to harvest. Giant trees and crops could provide us with more sustenance than we've ever had. And animals might experience some crazy mutations. The oxygen-loving species, like insects and arachnids, would be the winners of this situation. They would simply thrive in such a world, growing bigger and stronger than ever before. So if you've ever been terrified of a giant spider that you found in the house, just imagine what it would be like if it were 5 times bigger. But for species that have adapted to lower oxygen levels, things don't look that great. Mammals, for example, would have a pretty tough time. This could lead to a shift in the balance of power among different species, with some thriving and others struggling to survive. Overall, we could see some seriously cool adaptations, like birds developing the ability to fly higher than ever before. Dealing with huge animals could be both exciting and challenging. We'd probably have to build stronger shelters and try to stay out of their way. All this could also lead to increased natural disasters, as well as damage to ecosystems and wildlife. Fires would ignite quickly and burn fiercely, making wildfires a constant threat. Even a simple spark from a campfire could potentially lead to disaster. We might need to rethink our cooking and heating methods to avoid any accidents. By the way, if we lived on a planet with less oxygen, say about 15%, we would also have a hard time. For example, our bodies would have to work much harder to obtain the same amount of oxygen as they do on Earth. We would probably experience fatigue and shortness of breath much more quickly, and physical exercise would be much more challenging. We could have some problems with memory and concentration. So the amount of oxygen we have now is the most ideal. Let's appreciate it. As you can see, living on such a planet would be a real roller coaster. It would require some serious caution. But as long as we were careful, we'd be able to enjoy the benefits of all that extra oxygen in the air. Just be prepared for some wild and wacky effects along the way.
Meet Costello. He's a Brazilian reef octopus. But Costello isn't a regular octopus. While watching him, scientists began to suspect that he might be experiencing nightmares. When he was sleeping, he was changing colors, making some wild movements, expelling water, and even releasing ink. They decided to study Costello for a while. His behavior during sleep resembled stress and fear. The study showed that he might see vivid dreams, which are, at times, spooky. Well, as just one octopus, these cute underwater creatures are known for their intelligence and sometimes human-like behavior, so it's entirely possible that they see dreams just like we do. In Costello's case, he might be haunted by memories of tough times off the coast of the Florida Keys. Poor Costello has a rough past. He lost a tentacle to a predator before captivity, so maybe that's what he sees in his dreams. If proven true, this discovery could reshape how we perceive intelligence and awareness in both animals and humans. Well, it turns out plants can talk. Well, kind of. Scientists found out that plants actually make ultrasonic clicks when they're stressed. Imagine tomatoes and tobacco plants in a jam. They're making sounds like popping bubble wrap, but way too high for us to hear. These are called ultrasonic signals, and they might be their way of indicating stress. That would mean that plants can communicate with each other, and stressed plants prefer to be drama queens and let everybody know about their troubles. They make around 30 to 50 pops and clicks per hour. Calm and healthy plants don't do nearly as much. And not only do plants talk, but even have their own language. They make different sounds depending on whether the plant is experiencing thirst or is bothered by a snipped stem or something else. Moreover, some of them are so dramatic that they start ringing alarms even before they show signs of dehydration, when they know they're getting close to it. Scientists aren't sure why they do that, though. They believe that it might involve cavitation, a term that means air bubbles dancing in the plant's plumbing. Plants that sing these symphonies include corn, wheat, grapes, and even cacti. That is quite a big discovery in agriculture. We could use it to check if our crops are thirsty and stuff like that. So now we'll be eavesdropping on plants and deciphering their secret language. Okay, time for some universal news. Recent studies are shaking up what we thought we knew about the universe's age. Our findings during the last decades showed that the universe must be around 13.7 billion years old. However, a new study shows that it might be almost twice as old, up to 26.7 billion years. Keep in mind that it's not proven, so for now, the official number stays the same. Scientists were using the time since the Big Bang and studying ancient stars to measure the universe's age. But some stars were playing hard to get, looking older than the universe itself. For example, the ancient star Methuselah, which is estimated to be around 14 billion years old, which would be older than our universe. Also, the James Webb Space Telescope caught galaxies looking super mature just a few 100 million years after the Big Bang. All this poses some hard puzzles for astronomers. But this new hypothesis combines the expanding universe theory with something called the tired light theory. It suggests that light loses energy as it zips across cosmic distances. Combine this with the expanding universe theory, and bam! As the universe expands, the light loses energy, so we simply can't see all the super ancient stars that are very far away from us, which is why we could make a mistake in calculating our universe's age. The new model also pushes back when galaxies started forming. It suggests that those early galaxies spotted by the Webb telescope took way longer to form than we originally thought. This study is a serious shakeup in the scientific community. If we made such a huge mistake in calculations, we'd have to rethink the very fundamental astrophysics principles. That would be a giant leap, and we'd have to make a huge makeover of almost everything. Which is why we need to be very cautious about it. So while scientists test this new theory, we just have to wait for the results. Now, these aren't the only space news. The new AI technology is already being actively used for scientific research. This time, AI is helping us to look for signs of extraterrestrial life. Researchers in SETI created machine learning algorithms that would help us sift through the cosmic noise faster and more efficiently. When you point a radio telescope at the stars, it's like turning into a celestial radio station that's full of different signals. We catch everything from pulsars to radio galaxies and earthly interference. Obviously, it would be pretty hard to identify a potential signal from extraterrestrials in all this mess. For over 60 years, scientists had to do all this manually. It was a daunting task to scan the skies and explore countless stars and radio frequencies. But now, AI came to help. The algorithms are trained to recognize and distinguish known interference patterns, like those from mobile phones and electronic devices amidst the cosmic data. They spot anything deviating from known patterns, the potential needle in the haystack. And we've already had some breakthroughs here. The astronomers caught 8 signals that didn't fit known patterns. While not confirmed as extraterrestrial life, they show that there's a great potential for future research. Going back to animals, this time we're visiting prehistoric Earth. Imagine turtles so massive they make today's turtles look like tiny toys. Recently, scientists stumbled upon the fossilized remains of one of these giants. It's a sea-dwelling titan that cruised the European waters about 80 to 70 million years ago. The discovery was accidental. A hiker in northern Spain stumbled upon fragments of this creature near the Pyrenees Mountains. This turtle was roughly the size of a rhino, around 30 feet in length. Just to give you an idea, this creature would be about the size of an average car. It shows that extreme sizes were more common before an extinction event. The turtles we know now, of smaller, still substantial sizes, dominated afterward. But the ancient oceans were filled with giant turtles munching on mollusks and jellyfish. This discovery also challenges the idea that gigantic turtles were exclusive to North America. The existence of this turtle proves that these colossal reptiles were hanging out in European waters too. So this might be just the tip of an iceberg, and you'll want to steer around that one too. And finally, NASA's James Webb Space Telescope has made a great discovery. It detected a crucial carbon compound in space. It's called methycation, and this tiny molecule, even if it might seem insignificant, could help us unlock the secrets of interstellar organic chemistry. Carbon is incredibly important. Carbon molecules are building blocks that construct everything from stars to planets to, well, us. It's the key ingredient for life, and scientists are eager to understand how it shaped our existence on Earth, and if it could do the same elsewhere in the universe. And methycation plays a very important role in the creation of complex carbon-based molecules. That's why it's very cool that we discovered methycation, even if it's very far away. NASA scientists found it in a young star system. This system is chilling about 1,350 light-years away from us, in the Orion Nebula. The star in this system, which is smaller and a bit weaker than our Sun, is bombarded by intense ultraviolet light from nearby hot, young, massive stars. You'd think such strong UV radiation would destroy complex organic molecules. But the research team believes that it might actually kickstart the formation of these carbon compounds. Maybe stronger stars and their insane radiation levels actually work as energy sources for life. They set off a chemical chain reaction, which results in complex carbon stuff like plants and animals. Seems like we found yet another puzzle piece. We've all heard of the Sahara. Sure you have. It's the largest hot desert on the planet. A sea of sand covering an area larger than the contiguous United States. But have you ever wondered what lies beneath the sand dunes? To answer this question, we must travel deep into the past of our blue planet. Up until some 6,000 years ago, the Sahara was grassland. Humans were around at this time, not me, spreading agriculture around the planet. In the north of Africa, the color green dominated. Plenty of rainfall meant that there were lakes, rivers, pastures, and even forests. A completely different image of the Sahara from the barren landscape of today. But then, the climate started to shift. The region became parched, and the vegetation started disappearing. The wind did the rest. It took away the fine sediment after there were no plant roots to hold the ground together. Give it a couple thousands of years, and you get a familiar image of the Sahara. Sand and rocks stretching as far as the eye can see. But when it comes to volume, only a quarter of the Sahara is actually sand. The yellow sands of the Sahara are just one part of the story. The desert has many other features, such as gravel plains, salt flats, and plateaus. Makes you think if we understand the word desert correctly. For people who study such terrains, geologists, there is only one condition for defining a desert: precipitation. If an area gets little or no rain, then it's considered a desert. The Sahara certainly fits the bill. Its average annual rainfall is just 3 inches. Compare that to the nearly 45 inches a year in New York. When we look at precipitation, this sandy desert is only the third largest in the world. Number 1 and 2 are Antarctica and the Arctic. They are larger than the Sahara by millions of square miles. It sounds odd, but there is more than one type of desert. The first two are polar deserts, while the Sahara is a subtropical desert. But the difference in air temperature are staggering. In Antarctica's interior, temperatures plummet to minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Compare that to the highest temperature on record in the Sahara of 136 degrees Fahrenheit. But this desert has a cool side. At night, the temperature is roughly the same as the average yearly temperature in Denmark. This hot and cold roller coaster makes it hard to choose the right outfit when venturing into the Sahara. And what about the sand? How deep is it actually? The depth varies between 70 and 140 feet. That's not too deep. If you put the Statue of Liberty in a tall dune, half of it would still stick out of the sand. Its vast amounts in the Sahara were created by aeolian processes. That's Greek for wind. Over time, it blows and shapes the surface of the earth. In dry areas with sparse vegetation, winds erode the ground much faster. That's what happened in North Africa. Under all that sand is the bedrock and cracked clay. If you started digging, you would find the same everywhere on the planet, with one important difference. There is some type of soil covering the bedrock. This is not the case in the Sahara. Because of the arid climate and a lack of vegetation, sand covers the ground below. Over the course of thousands of years, a lot of interesting finds ended up in the desert sand. For example, there are petrified tree trunks. These are essentially preserved prehistoric trees. They date back to the time when the region was lush green. In some places, the trees of this fossilized forest are at least 65 feet tall. The wood is so well preserved that you can still see the texture and knots. There are even fossilized pine cones. In 1992, scientists found glass fragments in eastern Sahara. These canary yellow glass shards were scattered across hundreds of miles. They didn't belong to an ancient civilization, although ancient Egyptians used them to make jewelry. In fact, the breastplate of King Tut had a beautiful scarab beetle centerpiece made from this desert glass. For a long time, scientists were puzzled about the true origins of these fragments. They finally concluded that the glass was around 29 million years old. It is an impact tape. If that sounds like it has something to do with the word impact, you are correct. These rocks are formed when a meteorite hits the surface of the Earth. This generates a lot of heat. Scientists estimate that the temperature needed to melt this mineral was close to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Apart from the regular fine-grained sand, we also have melted sand in the Sahara. But the desert conceals other unlikely artifacts. Shark teeth are a common find in Morocco, which sits in the western part of the Sahara. What are the fossilized teeth of these marine predators doing in the middle of the desert? This part of the world looked entirely different millions of years ago. There was a sea cutting right through what is now a desert. The Trans-Saharan Seaway ran the length of present-day Algeria and Mali. It was around 165 feet deep. That was enough for all sorts of aquatic animals to inhabit it. Large catfish, sea snakes, and of course sharks lived in the area. British archaeologists even unearthed a turtle shell in Mali in the 1980s. For centuries, there was even an entire city hidden under the desert. Timgad was a Roman outpost constructed by the Emperor Trajan around the year 100 in the current era. For various reasons, its residents abandoned it around the year 700. The sands of the Sahara soon engulfed the city. It had remained hidden for nearly 1,000 years. Then, in the 1700s, a Scottish explorer started digging out the city. His team first uncovered a sandstone triumphal arch 40 feet high, similar to the ones we can see in Rome and Paris today. An amphitheater soon popped out of the sand, and it was followed by well-preserved statues of Roman emperors. The Scotsman's find was so impressive that no one believed him at first. It took 2 more centuries for archaeologists to fully excavate the city during the 1950s. The site covers a surface as large as 10 polo fields. The ruins reveal the full mastery of Roman city planning. All the streets meet at a right angle in what is known as an orthogonal grid. You can find the same layout in modern cities such as New York. Historians estimate that during its heyday, 10,000 people called Timgad home. Different nationalities lived here, from Romans to people of African descent. Today, more than 2.5 million people live in and around the Sahara. They are spread across 11 countries in total, and their living space is growing. The desert is 10% larger than it was just a century ago. This process doesn't involve sand pouring out of the Sahara. The ecosystems on the edges of the desert simply change over time. The wind blows the soil away and vegetation dwindles. The perfect conditions for the formation of a desert landscape. These changes are happening in the Sahel, a region south of the Sahara Desert. That's why the African countries have recently come together for a project called the Great Green Wall. The primary goal is to stop the desertification of the Sahel and hold back the sands of the Sahara. Their plan is ambitious and involves planting a wall of trees from the west to the east of the African continent. The proposed forest is not only going to be long, but wide as well. The Sahara and the Sahel share a historic bond. Since antiquity, camel caravans have been making the journey from Africa's Mediterranean coast in the north to the savannas in the south. The golden age of this trade kicked off in the 9th century. The perilous journey took several months to complete. The route was 2.5 times longer than the length of the Grand Canyon. Explorers still find evidence of these ancient caravans hidden away under the sands of the Sahara. Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago, in Africa. Now our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths which hung out in colder places, These animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling, sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the Megatherium, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they loved hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly for these hyenas, about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. First appearing around 42 million years ago, in July, I think. Many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now, down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the quincana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really love spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdies' shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to ancient pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were in fact intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many, many years ago. The unanswered mysteries surrounding ancient civilizations have been a source of inspiration for many conspiracy theorists. In fact, some of these mysteries are so interesting that many of us either already believe them or would like to. One thing is for sure though, none of those thousands of conspiracy theories have ever been, what's the word? Oh yeah, classified. Or have they? We're all aware that the CIA has done some questionable things throughout history for the sake of national security, but you wouldn't expect a book to be both a national and international threat. The CIA recently declassified parts of a book that talks about lost ancient civilizations and the catastrophic events that made them vanish thousands of years ago. This mysterious book was written in 1963 by a guy named Chan Thomas, and it was going to be published by Emerson House in 1965 until the CIA got involved. For some mysterious reason, they classified the book, and it was never released to the public until recently. But here's where it gets interesting. The book was declassified in 2013 due to the Freedom of Information Act, but it wasn't released to the public until 2016. And what was released truly raises a few questions. The original version of this document was 284 pages long, but the PDF essay that was released was heavily censored, with just 57 pages, which makes it 1/5 of the whole document. The pages were edited before they were released to the public in such a way that you wouldn't even notice that the other pages were missing. Now, no one really knows why this book was classified in the first place, but it has some interesting content from what I've gathered. The author of the book had quite the imagination and a huge love for ancient civilizations. And even though what he had to say is very thought-provoking, some of it is just bizarre. He believes that our planet is locked into a never-ending cycle of pole shifts and Earth crust displacements that are responsible for the mass extinctions of many civilizations which existed more than 6,000 years ago, even before the Sumerians. He believed that these events caused more damage to the Earth than meteors, and he bases this theory on a few artifacts that exist around the world but weren't really noticed until recently. But I'll get into that in a bit. Those mass extinctions that the book talks about include the end of the Ice Age, when huge 2-mile-thick ice sheets disappeared from northern Europe, Northern America, and Canada, and caused 100 species to go extinct. And here's how the author illustrates his hypothesis. He believes that there was a geomagnetic pole shift which caused catastrophic changes to both the atmosphere and the Earth's crust, resulting in the extinction of many civilizations over time. Now, even though the geomagnetic pole shift is a real thing, it doesn't just happen overnight. It happens really slowly, only about every few 100,000 years, according to scientists. But it's a bit more complicated than it sounds. It is a well-known fact that the North Pole is somewhere above Alaska, and the South Pole is close to the middle of Antarctica. Now, these are the geographic poles, and they'll always be north and south. However, the Earth's magnetic poles flipped a few 100,000 years ago. So if you had a compass, let's say 700,000 years ago, it would instead point south and show you the Antarctic. But the author of the book has a different theory. He believed that the flip of the north and south magnetic poles doesn't happen every few 100,000 years, but every 12,000 years, and that this flip occurs in just a few hours, causing a catastrophic apocalypse. He thinks this happens as a result of an explosion inside the Earth's core. This explosion causes the magnetic poles to flip, but it also causes the Earth's crust to move. According to the book, due to these catastrophic events, a lot of the Earth's continents that were submerged underwater rose above sea level in just a few hours. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The author also states that the Peruvian Andes were beneath the ocean before the last pole shift. And even though it seems far-fetched, since the Andes are approximately 22,000 feet above sea level, there was evidence to support that claim in the late 80s. Scientists found whale bones and fossils that are said to be millions of years old on top of the Andes and the Himalayan mountains. It's also suggested in the book that the deep freeze the Earth went through during the Younger Dryas event caused the Gulf Stream to be disrupted, and he points to some interesting evidence to support that theory. Frozen mammoths were found trapped in blocks of ice with food still in their mouths. Now, this is a true mystery, because freezing cold weather is in their nature, and they were among the few animals that could truly survive in the Ice Age. So, what could have caused them to freeze so quickly? Kinda makes you go, doesn't it? The document describes the Great Pyramid of Giza as a true enigma as well. The Pyramid of Giza is made out of 2.5 million stone blocks that are placed on top of each other with great precision. It's close to 750 feet wide and more than 450 feet high. To this day, we're still not able to explain how it was constructed, and it's quite difficult to understand the internal design as well. On the inside, the pyramid has no similarities to the other pyramids, and, despite popular belief, there were no mummies found in any of them. If you think that's a bit weird, wait for the next one. There are absolutely no hieroglyphs found in any of the pyramids, and that goes both ways. What do I mean? There are also no pyramids, or anything that resembles a pyramid, in any hieroglyphs either. Mr. Thomas believes that the pyramids were created hundreds of thousands of years before the Egyptians by a civilization that went extinct. Speaking of civilizations, in his book he even mentions the Greeks. He claims that in Greece, there was another ancient race of people that went extinct as well. He claims they were extremely tall with blue eyes and blonde hair, and had access to advanced technology that the Greeks couldn't have known about in their prime. Now, before we drift too far away from the stone blocks, let's talk about another mystery, the temple in Baalbek, Lebanon, and its ginormous foundation blocks. Those stones, which make up the Heliopolis, were also used for the temple in Rome. The foundations of the temples are made of 900-ton trilithon stones, and according to the author, this is proof that there must have been a lost ancient civilization with advanced technology. Now, most archaeologists claim that those stones were made by the Romans. However, there's no evidence to support that. The Romans didn't have the technological equipment to make the stones or lift them. So, you might think, what if they just made them in that place right then and there? Well, those stones were also lifted 30 feet high and were placed next to each other with mathematical precision. And let's not forget about the blocks on top of the Heliopolis in Lebanon, which weigh about 800 tons each. But wait till you hear the next one. The Romans don't even credit themselves for these stones. They claim that they built up the sides, but they don't take credit for the extraordinarily large and heavy foundation stones. The author also makes an interesting point about the distance between the Roman capital and Baalbek in Lebanon. Why would the Romans build the world's largest monolithic stones in such a remote area, and so far away from their capital, and never take credit for it? Well, folks, it's a mystery to me. Now, let's move on to the most intriguing enigma, Easter Island, which is located in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, or nowhere, if you will. The author questions how people found it or even settled in such a remote island that long ago. One of the signifiers of Easter Island are the Moai statues, and the mystery surrounding who they depict and why. What's an even bigger question is how they were created, moved, and positioned in the places they were found. According to this declassified document, Easter Island was part of the now lost continent named Mu, and it was sunk in the Pacific Ocean in a disastrous cataclysm that happened during one of those pole shifts. The continent of Mu, according to the book, was as big as South America, and what we now call Easter Island is just what's left of that continent. The author also believes that this is what happened with the lost city of Atlantis as well. Plato is even quoted about this, saying that the whole city of Atlantis sunk miles beneath the waves within just a day. Even though the whole story sounds very intriguing and makes some interesting points, we know that, scientifically speaking, a cataclysmic pole shift causing entire civilizations to go extinct isn't possible.
Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Göbekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement, no hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Göbekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Göbekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change, because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Göbekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Göbekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Göbekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Göbekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Göbekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Göbekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Göbekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Göbekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
In 2016, two researchers were trekking through the forests of Arunachal Pradesh, India, when they literally stumbled upon this camouflaged beauty hidden in the leaves. A local man pointed out the snake, and they quickly realized it wasn't just any average viper. With its unusual pointed snout, similar to a hump-nosed viper, and a stunning orange belly, this snake had them scratching their heads. Back at camp, they took a closer look and knew they'd found something special. DNA tests at the Indian Institute of Science confirmed it. They found a brand new species, now known scientifically as Trimeresurus arunachalensis. But the snake's unique features didn't stop there. The snake's paired reproductive organ was unlike any other viper, and its scale pattern was completely unique. While its closest relative has around 20 rows of scales around the middle of its body, this mysterious snake had only 17. The next species is a record breaker, and it's known as the largest gecko ever discovered, measuring around 2 feet long and being as thick as a man's wrist. The only known specimen of Delcourt's giant gecko is currently in France, but its exact origins are still a little bit of a puzzle. At first, people thought it might be from New Zealand because some local legends spoke of a giant, mysterious lizard that lived in forests. Even though it was a pretty fascinating theory, some recent DNA studies suggest that this nocturnal species is probably from New Caledonia. But as of now, no one can confirm it 100%. In general, sleeper sharks are big, slow-moving creatures that mostly hang out in deep, cold ocean waters. They usually have bulky bodies and a broad, flat head, which helps them blend into the dark sea. But in 2017, was caught at a fishing harbor and collected from a fish market located in Taiwan, and it didn't look like any of its relatives. First off, this 4.4-foot shark had smaller eyes and a tiny second dorsal fin compared to its cousins. It also had more rows of teeth in its upper jaw and fewer in the lower jaw, but the biggest surprise was that it was a pregnant female carrying 33 embryos. This means there are probably more of these sharks hiding out there in the deep ocean. We just haven't found them yet. Meet the pocket shark. It is tiny, just about 5.5 inches long, while most deepwater sharks are around 6.5 feet. But don't let its small size make you underestimate it, because this creature is definitely one of the ocean's coolest secrets. Discovered in 1979 in the deep waters of Chile, this tiny shark is like a real-life spy gadget with its mysterious pockets near its front fins. These pockets are large, measuring about 4% of its body length, and are believed to either glow or secrete pheromones. So this shark might actually light up to either confuse predators or attract prey in the dark depths. And when I say deep, I mean really deep. It is believed that this creature hangs out over 9,000 feet down, which is roughly the height of 7 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other, but inside the ocean. Besides its initial discovery in Chile, it was spotted again in 2010 in the Gulf of Mexico, but it hasn't shown up since. The pocket shark is not the only glowing animal we're talking about today. This inch-long cockroach, scientifically known as Luchihormetica lucae, was actually first collected back in 1939, but only got its moment in the spotlight decades later in 2012. What makes this little buddy so interesting is that it uses bioluminescence, meaning it has spots that light up in the dark. Unlike fireflies that mostly use their glow to find a mate, this cockroach uses its light to mimic a toxic click beetle and scare off predators. Unfortunately, the region in Ecuador where it was found was hit hard by a volcanic eruption, raising fears that this glowing marvel might be a one-of-a-kind discovery. Continuing with tiny creatures, meet Hippocampus minotaur, also known as the bull-neck seahorse. This little seahorse stands out with its wide neck, large head, and small body, which is why it's got the Minotaur nickname. The only known specimens were collected off the coast of Eden, Australia, and no one has ever seen it alive in its natural habitat. So that's why we don't know much about its day-to-day life. Some studies suggest it lives deep underwater, around 325 feet down, which is roughly the equivalent to the height of a 30-story building. It's believed this mysterious seahorse likes to wrap its prehensile tail around corals and might even hide in sand beds. Its yellow-orange color likely helps it blend into coral reefs. So spotting this intriguing creature in the ocean is pretty much like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Next on our list is the Nariño cat. In 1989, a single specimen of this mysterious spotted feline was discovered in Galeras volcano in southern Colombia. This little guy had a short tail with 7 black rings and a black tip, and its fur was absolutely unique, being more reddish than that of its relatives. Understanding that it wasn't an ordinary animal, researchers decided to visit a bunch of museums all over Latin America to find similar felines, but they came up pretty empty-handed. Then, DNA analysis confirmed that it was unlike any other known cat, having split from its closest relatives around 1.9 million years ago. The Bogota sun angel is a hummingbird with a stunning purple color and black flight feathers, plus a bright green chin and crown. For years, we only knew of one specimen that was bought in Bogota, Colombia back in 1909, and that was pretty much it. Nobody knew much more about this beautiful and mysterious bird. But that changed in 2017, when a study decided to analyze its DNA once again. The results suggest that the Bogota sun angel might not be a completely separate species after all. It looks like it is actually a hybrid, meaning it was a mix of hummingbirds from 2 different species, and it's likely that its mother was a long-tailed sylph, which is a gorgeous hummingbird that mostly lives in the Andes in South America. The spotted green pigeon, also known as the Liverpool pigeon, is like the unicorn of the bird world. It was first described in 1783 by an English physician named John Latham, who saw it once and that's it. Since then, no one has ever doubted that it was a pigeon, and many researchers were convinced it was a distinct species. But recent DNA studies revealed that this bird could actually be closely related to the famous dodo. You know, that chubby, flightless bird from Mauritius that looked like a giant pigeon with a quirky beak. Anyway, the Liverpool pigeon is about 13 inches long and has a unique look with yellow spotted feathers. Unlike its ground-loving cousin, the Nicobar pigeon, the spotted green pigeon was likely more of a tree hugger, feasting on fruits up in the branches. Today, if you want to see this rare bird, you'll have to visit the World Museum in Liverpool, where the only known specimen resides. While you're in England, make sure to swing by London and check out the Natural History Museum. There, you will find the only specimen of a flying fox known scientifically as Pteropus bruneus. Flying foxes are usually some of the largest bats in the world. Their body length, I mean their size excluding their wings, can be around 16 inches. But this special bat, discovered in 1874 at Percy Island, is more like a mini version of its cousins, measuring 8.3 inches from head to toe. So even though it hasn't been spotted in the wild for a while, I wouldn't worry too much if you happen to come across it.
So if you see a rainbow, that means you're in for some good luck. But if you see a deep-sea fish, this means that something tragic is about to happen. Let's have a look at ancient lures and what they might mean IRL. In August 2020, people started out their day just like any other in California. It was sunny, so they decided to soak in the sun at the beach. They were snorkeling and kayaking when one of them spotted something out of the ordinary – a doomsday fish. The creature was 12 feet long. It's known as an oarfish, and only about 20 of them have washed up in California since 1901. Oarfishes live in obscure parts of the ocean, but why are they linked to doomsday? Japanese folklore says they are harbingers of disaster. These creatures were once thought to be sea serpents, and they are known as the messenger of the beautiful palace at the bottom of the ocean. The thing is, they only left the beautiful palace to warn humans about a disaster. That's why they're mainly known as bad omens. And when you see one, you can expect to see a tsunami or an earthquake right after. Even oceanographers confirm that this is a famous association. Now here's where it gets weird. The oarfish washed up near San Diego shores on the 10th of August. And then, on the 12th of August, a magnitude 4.4 earthquake hit Los Angeles. That's not the first time it happened. In 2011, in Japan, about 20 oarfishes were found stranded on the beaches and coastlines of Tehuco. Right after that, a magnitude 9 earthquake and tsunami hit the city. Something similar happened in the Philippines. On February 8, 2017, an oarfish was seen. 2 days later, a magnitude 6.7 earthquake struck the city and its nearby provinces. Sure, there is no way to prove both events are connected. The Seismological Society of America is adamant in saying that this is pure superstition. A recent study analyzed the coincidences and concluded that this association is statistically untrue. Can we say this happened literally out of the blue? Humans have historically noticed animals acting strange right before natural disasters. Earthquakes, floods, even tsunamis. It's like animals can sense something we can't. In fact, there's a lot of science to back it up. Studies show that animals can detect subtle environmental changes, like shifts in the Earth's electromagnetic field or infrasonic sounds, things humans wouldn't notice. This happens because most animals have a wider hearing range than humans and have extra sensitive senses that help them detect gases emitted from the Earth. This theory got famous after the tragic tsunami that destroyed several cities and villages in Indonesia back in 2004. Most man-made warning systems shut down and didn't serve their role of warning humans about the disaster. Sensors were out of action due to maintenance, while other coastal areas simply didn't have any tsunami warning systems. Terrible timing, I know. Still, minutes and hours before the 30-foot wave hit the city, some animals sensed the danger and fled. Eyewitnesses say that elephants ran for higher ground, while flamingos abandoned their low nesting areas and dogs refused to go outdoors. A local reported that he saw a herd of buffalo turning their ears toward the sea and then stampeded to the top of a hill. A lot of the people that survived the tsunami used animals as their warning systems. Now, this is not the first time humans have relied on animals to save their lives. The first official account of when it happened dates back to 373 BCE. I wasn't around then, but the Greek historian Euclides reports how the local population saw rats, weasels, and snakes running from the town before a massive earthquake hit. So what exactly is it that animals can sense that humans can't? To find that out, scientists put biologging tags on cows, sheep, and dogs living in Italy. For about half a year, they tracked the animals. During this time, official statistics recorded over 18,000 quakes in the region. The most shocking information was that animals began to change their behaviors up to 20 hours before an earthquake. Before an earthquake, something called positive holes happen. It's an electric charge that flows from the crust up to the surface of the Earth. They can change the air molecules above where they appear, and animals can pick up on them. There's also evidence that animals might sense changes in groundwater. Before earthquakes, the stress in fault lines can release radon gas, which could alter the chemistry of groundwater. Animals that rely on it might detect these changes and react. Birds are also super sensitive to shifts in the Earth's magnetic field, which can change just before a quake. Another research happened near Mount Etna. Located in Sicily, Italy, it's one of the most active volcanoes on the planet. In 2002, a massive eruption wiped out a ski lift, 2 hotels, and a series of shops located near Etna. So, over the past years, a group of researchers decided to track goats living next to Etna. Their big aha moment came in 2012, when the goats started to act erratically 6 hours before Etna started to spew lava. These researchers were able to retrospectively predict around 7 disasters over the course of 2 years, all thanks to these goats. Back in 2014, a group of scientists studying golden-winged warblers in Tennessee noticed something odd. The birds had taken a detour from their customary breeding grounds. These little birds flew 435 miles from the Cumberland Mountains, where they had just arrived after flying over 3,000 miles from South America. Right after the birds left, a series of more than 80 tornadoes struck the area, causing over $1 billion in damage. What these birds did is something scientists call an evacuation migration. They sensed the tornadoes coming from over 250 miles away. Infrasound is a big disaster giveaway. Storms and tornadoes make very strong infrasounds that can travel thousands of miles from the storm. Now, infrasounds are low-range frequencies, anything ranging below 20 Hz. With our normal set of human ears, we would never hear this. We have an average hearing that ranges from 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. That means you can hear something like a very, very low bass note or as loud as the buzzing of a mosquito right next to your ear. An elephant's hearing range can reach below 20 Hz. This would make elephants expert at detecting disasters. Scientists also think that detecting infrasound is what helps birds dodge storms when they must cross the ocean. You see, the Pacific Ocean is known to not be at all passive. Although courageous humans venture to cross it, they're usually met with severe storms and conditions that their satellite instruments sometimes can't detect. Meanwhile, there's an ongoing project from France's National Museum of Natural History that is tracking more than 100 birds on their annual crossing over the Pacific. With the help of the International Space Station, they're trying to understand how these little creatures respond to natural hazards en route. But not everyone's convinced. Some scientists argue that while animals might be sensitive to environmental shifts, predicting disasters based on their behavior is too risky. The U.S. Geological Survey has pointed out that many reported cases of unusual animal behavior before disasters are anecdotal, meaning stories and reports, and large-scale studies have yet to prove a direct link. Although humans don't have these super capabilities of predicting disasters, we have some things that might help us. Notice this. The next time you're in a place where lightning is going to hit, your hair will give a sign. If it stands on end, this means that lightning is aimed toward your beautiful person and is about to hit you. So run, find shelter, get inside a house. That's the best you can do in a situation like this.